Columbus was welcomed to the Sidney Crosby show on Tuesday night, and for today's episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast, Pat and I are going to go over that, plus everything about this massive win for the Pittsburgh Penguins.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes. You can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host Patrick Jamp. You can follow him on Twitter at Cinder for Wet, and you can follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen / watch of the day. Penguins 5, Blue Jackets 3. Big brother is better than little brother. Yet again, the Penguins are 9-0-1 to start the season, and it looks like you have something to say right about now.
That's not the biggest story of the day. The biggest story of the day is not the victory.
What is it?
It is Hunter Hodes' birthday. Can we have some snaps and claps for it, people?
I appreciate that. Thank you. I know 26, it's nothing really to celebrate. I'll be 30 in 4 years. It's time's going by way too quick. Appreciate that. And, for everyone that's reached out so far, really appreciate the love for today and everything. But
he had no idea that was coming, by the way. I kept that as we spend like 20-30 minutes before we hit record to give you guys a look behind the scenes, just kind of mapping out what we're going to do. And I did not tell him I was doing that, and it was the most difficult thing in the world because I wanted to say I wanted to do something for his birthday. So happy birthday, buddy.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And again, thank you to everyone who has reached out so far. I really, really appreciate it. But all right, enough of that stuff. Let's get into this game. Again, Penguins 5, Jackets 3. The Penguins are 9-0-1, and in the last 10 against the Blue Jackets, 19-3-2 in their last 24 games against them. As I said, big brother is better than little brother. And let's start with Sidney Crosby continuing to show everyone why he is not only a top 10 player in the league, why he is a top 5 player still in the NHL despite being 36 years old. That hat trick that he had last night was a thing of beauty. The puck was following him every time he was on the ice. You know what? I'm going to give myself some kudos because I hinted on the Tuesday episode for the preview that a big performance from him was coming. And sure enough, he owns the Blue Jackets in this one. I love the first of the 3 goals because it was kind of, I texted you this. It was similar to what we saw with Evgeny Malkin on Saturday, where it was like, anything you can do, I can also do. And then the second one was a pure vintage play that we've seen him and Chris Letang run numerous times. Now he got to run with Erik Karlsson. And then the empty netter, we all know, we all saw that. But Sid did not let the Penguins lose in this game. I think last year, this would be a game that the Penguins would have lost, considering how, they were the better team, but they were also a bit sloppier compared to how they were in the previous 4 games. But Crosby was like, you know what? I'm not letting us lose, and I'm going to bring home the win. And he sure did that. 5 in a row for this team, 8-6 overall, 2 points out of second place in this division, and they are in a playoff spot right now. I just can't say enough good things about Sidney Crosby. Almost top 10 in the league in scoring, top 10 in goals basically as well. There are going to be future generations that have never watched him before. They're going to be like, what was it like to watch Sidney Crosby? And I'm really just going to tell them you wouldn't get it just because of what he's doing at age 36. But Pat, again, just amazing stuff from the captain.
First and foremost, I will give you your props for calling it, but I'm going to put an asterisk on that. Wow, Sidney Crosby having a big game against Columbus. He's never done that before. Yeah, right. You really stepped on a ledge with that one. but let's make sure there is context, though. He has really looked like he has been ramping up towards a game like this for the past week and a half or so. So it was only a matter of time, and you nailed when it was going to happen. So props to you for that. But you kind of said it as well. Everybody's going to focus on the 4 points, 3 goals, 1 assist. It's everything else that made this a vintage Crosby performance. He owned the puck. When it was on his stick, his passes were crisp. He was a step ahead of everybody else. He knew what was going to happen before it happened. He was an absolute menace in the defensive zone last night. When they were in the defensive zone, he was damn near a third defenseman.
Yeah.
He was playing that well defensively. So that was the kind of game from Sid where he kind of takes over. And while, yes, last night it showed on the stat sheet with 4 points, it's games like that where you watch Sid and there will be nights where he plays like that and maybe only gets an assist, maybe only gets a goal. But that's when you know Sid's really starting to round into classic Crosby form, because he is the best player on the ice and he's doing things that impact the game in all 3 zones. So last night, and like you said, that was also a moment where he kind of put that team on his back and went, we may not be at our best tonight, but we are not losing.
And they definitely didn't start out playing their best hockey. The first period, very sloppy, very just run-of-the-mill, I should say. They woke up as the game went on. I still didn't like some of their play in the neutral zone and just overall in the defensive zone, but they still held Columbus to 7 high-danger chances at 5-on-5, only 2 in the final 40 minutes at 5-on-5. I'll take that any day, even though they were a bit sloppy, but overall, you said it. I mean, Sid was an absolute force. His play on the Gensel goal, and of course, Jake Gensel, also known player who scores against the Blue Jackets almost every game at this point. Really nice play by Sid there, but he was the main one that got them this victory. And it was, again, absolutely spectacular to see. And with Crosby as well, I also want to shout out Erik Karlsson. He continues to be also a menace on the ice. That rocket of a shot that he had to give the Penguins a brief lead in the third period before Crosby gave them the lead for good later on, that was a thing of beauty, man. I mean, I loved how Riley Smith and Evgeny Malkin were kind of just toying with the Blue Jackets in the offensive zone. It kind of reminded me of, Henrik to Daniel, back to Henrik, when they were just playing catch with each other, kind of towards the right side of the ice. And then when Malkin fires that puck over to Karlsson, he makes no mistake. That was just a mammoth of a shot. And he continues to play electric hockey for this team right now. And I know we've all been spoiled by watching Chris Letang do this type of stuff for a long time, but man, we're even more spoiled now watching Erik Karlsson do this. And I mean no disrespect to Chris, but at a higher level.
And we'll talk about Chris in the next segment, because we're going to talk about this win a little bit more. But yeah, to kind of further what you started with there, it was also another classic Evgeny Malkin game, because while he had his issues last night, he
was a bit sloppy.
He was sloppy. That second line overall was pretty sloppy last night. But at the same time, that was a game where you saw Malkin was feeling himself. He literally would intercept passes from his own teammates just because he wanted the puck on his stick. And a lot of people will hear and see that and think that's selfish play. It's not. It's because Evgeny Malkin is feeling himself. It's because he knows he can make the play to better his team's chances to win or get a goal or keep possession or do something in the defensive zone. Because the couple of times where he intercepted a pass from his own teammate was the shift where he made that pass to Erik Karlsson.
Yep.
And the other thing I'll add too on that is, one, we'll talk a little bit more about the win and what all happened against Columbus, but the Penguins, outside of making some tweaks to their system overall, this is how you know they're finding a stride right now. Because a lot of the stuff they did last night, they've been doing this season for the most part. But, start of the season, that pass to Erik Karlsson for that goal either doesn't get through, or Karlsson's shot goes wide, or he puts it in the goalie's chest. The play that Crosby made right before Gensel scored his goal, that it gets intercepted, or the goalie makes a save. So when your team's hot, they're hot and everything's working. And right now, everything is working for the Penguins.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, when you're getting these type of bounces and just mammoth shots like that from Erik Karlsson, you know your team is humming in the situation. And this was obviously a big win because of the week ahead with New Jersey, even though Hughes look like they're going to be out, with Carolina, who's playing good, with Vegas right after, even though Vegas just lost to Washington. That's still going to be a very tough game. 3 Metropolitan Division games in a row, though. You have to win the games in your division and make sure that you're not giving loser points to those teams, especially with the competition the Penguins are in right now. Again, only 2 points behind Carolina, barely up on New Jersey. You got to get some results in these games. We'll obviously discuss that a little later on this week, but that will do it for this first segment of today's podcast. Coming up in the second segment, we're going to get into more things regarding this game, especially the play of the third line, Pat, because it was another great game from them. Tristan Jarry's performance, the penalty kill especially, all that good stuff. But before we get to that, we got to tell you all about Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. You can do this by yourself. You can do this with your friends. Heck, you can even do this with your family, and you can do this for NFL, NBA, MLB when that starts up, and college football. All you have to do is pick weather studs like Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, Alex Ovechkin, Erik Karlsson, Nathan McKinnon will record goals, assists. Heck, you can even do plus minus. And you can also throw goalies in there as well for saves and all that good stuff. And to win a 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Penguins fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host Patrick Dam. So one of, I think, the big turning points in the third period was late when the Penguins had to kill off one of the Jackets' power plays. And man, they had a lot of power plays last night. Mike Sullivan was seething on the bench. I was honestly getting a little flustered myself because some of the calls from this officiating crew were a bit much, to say the least. The Penguins just didn't get enough power plays, even though they probably should have. I thought the Blue Jackets got away with a couple blatant penalties, but Penguins got the win, whatever. But that final
I will say it was more the disparity for me that kind of made me annoyed. Outside of Gaudreau's blatant dive on that cross check, the 3 other penalties were penalties and they needed to be called. It was just the fact that the Blue Jackets didn't play a game where they only had 1 penalty. They committed a couple infractions that went uncalled. So I don't think the Penguins, outside of Gaudreau's dive, really took any non-penalties that just got ticky-tack calls. They all were penalties.
A couple times, I think a couple Penguin players were being held. I believe one of the times was Ryan Graves behind the net, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember I was listening to the Blue Jackets broadcast and they were saying Mike Sullivan was seething on the bench. I'm like, yeah, I don't blame him because that was a blatant penalty that they just did not call for some reason. But that final PK, just great stuff from the Penguins, even when the Blue Jackets were pushing with Werenski, Laine, Gaudreau, all those guys, and especially Tristan Jarry. He was excellent on the PK last night. And I feel like a lot of times, I mean, we say this a lot. I know other people say this too. Your goaltender has to be your best penalty killer at times, and he sure was that last night. And overall, the penalty killers, I should say, shout out to them. They killed all the penalties, and I think that was also a big reason why the Penguins won this game.
Yeah, the penalty killing was excellent, and I can't really critique it. I will say this, though, in regards to Jarry. 2 of the 3 goals, I put a little bit on him. The first goal, kind of a busted play and a bad turnover, and everybody was at fault on that one.
Ryan Shea got walked on that play, so I'm not going to blame Tristan too much for it.
All 6 Penguins had some kind of a fault. You'd like a save, but at the same time, you don't want it to get to that point. So the second goal, absolutely on Jarry. Just Boone Jenner's the same size as he is, and it wasn't a clean screen at all. It was very much a side screen. You got to get a save there, especially when it hits you. And then the third goal, there's absolutely nothing he could have done. It was a terrible back check, and the guy wide open at the back door gets the puck clean, and no goalie's making that save. You might get the hope save where they dive across and it hits the paddle, but all in all, though, the thing that worried me last night was, credit when it's due, he made all 10 saves on the power play when Columbus had the power play. What worried me last night is he was fighting it. He was really fighting it, in my estimation. You look at the way he was making some saves, they didn't look clean. It wasn't him being aggressive and out on his angle. It was him almost kind of reacting to the puck hitting him. And when he plays like that, it's worrisome because that's when we've seen him give up 3 or 4 goals where 3 of the 4 are on him directly. So we dodged a bullet last night. He puts a 900 save percentage up and he's good on the power play. But last night was, again, I'll get into this a little bit later, but you're lucky you're only playing Columbus on a night like last night.
Right. I mean, I think if this was against a better team, it could have been a different result. But I mean, again, you play who's on your schedule at this
right.
point.
You can only play who's in front of you.
Right. And the save that really got me out of my seat, to be honest, was when he came out on when the Penguins had a power play. Karlsson kind of misplayed the puck when it was in the air. I think he tried to bat it down, but it just got past him. And then it looked like the Blue Jackets were going to get a breakaway. Tristan's like, you know what? Nope, that's not going to happen. I'm going to come out of my net and just send the puck to the other side of the boards. And he did get a little.
He got a shot on goal.
I know he did. I mean, sometimes in those situations, the puck will ricochet off a player and then it goes to another player. And then there's an empty net there waiting for an easy goal. But Jarry, that did not happen, thankfully. And he was able to send it the other way. Was flexing his leg a little bit. I think he was fine afterward. But still, that was also a big moment in the game. But overall, I think, in my opinion, he mostly had a good game. Not his best, obviously, but still good enough for the Penguins to win this game. I definitely think he has another level to reach, though. I mean, we've seen that over these last 4 games, I should say. But let's get to the third line now. This line continues to just flat out cook. Lars Eller was a menace again on the penalty kill last night, a menace at 5-on-5 as well. When I watched his film over the offseason, I kind of saw a guy who didn't really skate that well anymore, but he's turned back the clock with the Penguins. He's skating like he was in 2016, 2017, and 2018 for the Capitals right now. And when that line was on the ice for the Penguins, the Eller, Zohorna, and O'Connor line, it was dynamite for the Penguins. 16 shot attempts for, 7 shot attempts against, 72% of the scoring chances, 5 high danger chances for, 1 high danger chance against. I know they didn't score, but the process, again, continues to be there with this line. They're hemming teams in their own zone, getting quality chances. Again, I know the goals didn't come, but that line is really humming right now, and it's great to see.
They're really a microcosm of what's happened this first month and a half with the Penguins, and that's the process is there and the results are going to come.
Yeah.
That line was great last night. Again, they were tremendous. It seemed like every time they were on the ice, they were making some kind of a difference. And that's more than what you obviously once the goals start coming, which will be nice, but that's pretty much all you ask of your third line is to go out and make a difference. They don't have to score like your top 6. They have to either defend well or push the pace for the opponent. And they've been doing both. They have been very good defensively. And when they get into the offensive zone, their forecheck is very good. They find themselves hemming the other team in their zone, and they're getting shots on goal and they're getting chances. And it's my North Star really with a lot of things in hockey. I'll start complaining more when chances stop coming if goals aren't there. If the chances are there and the goals don't come, hey, you know what? That's life. That's hockey. Sometimes the puck doesn't go in. It's when the chances stop coming that I get worried.
Right. And obviously, in the early parts of the season, the chances weren't coming at all. But then you make that quick change, boom, Radim Zohorna comes in, transforms that third line. And as the sample continues to get bigger, as each game goes on, I get at least a little more confident that this line could potentially work down the stretch. I still think they're maybe one more forward short, but I am really liking what I'm seeing from this line. And man, I could watch Radim Zohorna play all night, honestly. He is such a treat to watch with the puck on his stick. And I know that may be weird to say, considering his sample size is also a bit small, but with how big he is, how long his reach is, he makes defenders really think about what they should do when he has the puck on his stick. He is an absolute treat to watch on that line. I was really had my eye on him last night.
Small sample size or not, when it keeps being consistent throughout every time he's on the ice or every time he plays a game, eventually you just have to say, well, I think that's just who this guy is. Mm-hmm. So we can say small sample size. And while that is true, it just keeps being the same result. So eventually you just have to say, hey, this is who this guy is. So that's where I am with him. And I will be a little bit of the skunk at the garden party here when it comes to last night. I said it already. When your team's hot and on a win streak, everything goes right. The thing I will say is with the week to come, they can't play like they did last night or they are in trouble.
I agree. I wanted to just say that. They weren't as good in the neutral zone. That's fine. You're playing Columbus. I think they were being like, okay, we're playing a bad team. We can maybe get away with this. I know you're going to say you can't get away with this against 3 really good teams.
No.
One of which will be on the road, 2 at home. And you got to play at least some better defense in your own zone. Again, it's good that you held Columbus to 7 high danger chances at 5-on-5, 8 overall. But the way they played, especially in that first period, that's not going to work against these better teams. They got to wake up at least a little bit and get back to the formula they had the prior 4 games.
The thing that worried me most last night was there were a lot of moments through all 60 minutes, not just in the first period, where they were trying to play fire wagon trade chance hockey, and that's just not who they are anymore. And as much fun as it is to watch, if we are going to root for this team to win a Stanley Cup, the true contenders in the East, especially New York, New Jersey, Carolina, if you try to do that against them, against even Toronto or even teams like Ottawa, who isn't a contender, but they're young and talented, if you're going to just trade chances and odd man rushes with them, you are going to get buried. And with a team like New Jersey, even with some of their better players out coming to town tomorrow night, you try to trade chances with them, it's not going to go your way. So they have to be more disciplined tomorrow night. They have to be more disciplined overall. And when you play the bad teams like Columbus, you can get away with it. But considering they've got a murderer's row of contenders and good teams coming to town and they're heading to them over the next 2 weeks, we cannot see a performance like we did last night.
Right. And the schedule even gets nastier next week before Thanksgiving. You have Buffalo, and I know the Tage Thompson injury is really unfortunate considering he's one of the best goal scorers in the league. The Rangers, obviously. You got the Maple Leafs, which will be a fun game. The schedule's about to turn nasty, and the Penguins are going to have to go back to doing what they were doing before this game against Columbus if they want to get the results against some of the better teams in the league. But that will do it for this second segment. Coming up to end the show, yes, I know we've somehow forgot over the last week or two because we're 2 idiots, but it's Warrior Helmet Wednesday. We're going to get back to this for the final segment. But before we get to that, we got to tell you all about the Jace case. We spend a lot of time talking together, you and I. We get fired up together on wins and losses, who starts and who sits. I'm thankful for that connection we have. And today, I want our chat to be, just a little more personal. I just learned that you can get a 1-year supply on ED medications. You realize what that means? Bring on extended travel, bring on the next natural disaster or supply chain issue. You are covered, my friend. You don't have to worry about whether or not you can refill your prescriptions like Cialis and all this other stuff. And this is possible because of our friends at Jace Medical. Go online right now at jacemedical.com to receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. Remember to use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for a discount as well. If you or someone you love would like to get some peace of mind by having a year supply of any daily med, go to jacemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Remember to use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your purchase. All right, we're back here in this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host Patrick Dam. So, Pat, Warrior Helmet Wednesday, we're getting back to it. A lot of options for this one, and I think for the previous ones, we've agreed on who we've given our Warrior helmets to, but today, I don't think that's the case. I have a few people who I've had in mind for a while. You are the same. Who are you giving the Warrior helmet to for today?
The really easy option after last night would be, and deservedly so, Sidney Crosby.
Yes.
But there's somebody right behind him who's playing just as well, and it's getting somehow just a little bit flying just a little bit under the radar. So for my Warrior Helmet Wednesday, I'm giving it to Erik Karlsson. Because in this past week, Erik Karlsson, while Crosby's got the 4 goals, 3 assists for 7 points, Erik Karlsson nipping right at his heels. 3 goals, 3 assists for 6 points, and a power play goal in there as well. And he has just looked every bit like the superstar the Penguins thought they were getting, especially this past week or so throughout this win streak, he has been a driver behind a lot of these victories, both on the analytics and just through the eye test. I said it last night to our pal Jesse Marshall. He made the joke of, I feel really bad for people who aren't watching Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin right now because they're playing some kind of hockey. I said I also feel bad for people who aren't watching the pairing of Erik Karlsson and Marcus Pettersson, because this is the way I'm describing them, and I'm sticking with it. They have been as smooth as a barbershop shave lately, man. It's been incredible to watch. And because points and stats aside, they're just feeding off each other perfectly. They're making passes that you look at and go, how did they see that was there? How did they know the other guy was going to be there? And how are they doing this so efficiently, especially considering they haven't played before until this year, and they look like they've been playing together for 10 years, man. And just overall, Erik Karlsson gets my Warrior helmet because he has had himself not just a week, but a start to the season, man.
We said heading into the season that Evgeny Malkin was going to be even better than he was last year because he's finally getting the chance to play with a superstar caliber defenseman. Sidney Crosby always gets the minutes from Chris Letang. It's been like that for the entirety of his and Geno's tenures, Usually Geno gets the scraps. He gets Jeff Petrie. He's got other players on the second pairing. And I don't mean no disrespect to John Marino. He's a pretty good player, but him and Jeff Petrie are not Erik Karlsson, to say the least. But we're seeing what Geno can do with Karlsson. So that's a very good vote. I also could go for Sidney Crosby. I almost did. But you know what? I'm going to go with Tristan Jarry for my Warrior helmet. He has been electric over this last week. Not the best start on Tuesday night, but made the saves he needed to make on the penalty kill to keep the Penguins in that game in the third period. Was great against the Sabres, was great against the Ducks before he got banged up a little bit, and was also great against the Sharks. 6-5 overall this season, .918 save percentage, but over the last week and a half, he has been a completely different goalie since that Ducks collapse. He gets my Warrior helmet for this one because he's really starting to hopefully turn this season around and be more consistent for the Penguins and net, especially for someone who's getting over $5 million. So, Sid, I did want to give it to you. I wish this could be a tie because I would also maybe go half and half with him and Jarry, but I'm going to give it to Tristan considering how good he's been over the last week. Again, I know how good Sid's been. He's been electric. That's the easy one. I'm going to go with Tristan with how great in goal he's been over the last week and a half.
Yeah, obviously I disagree because I said I gave Karlsson mine, but I don't think that's a bad choice. I don't know if I would quite give him the helmet, but I always like to say this both in my writing and on this podcast. If fair is fair and we're going to call him out when he's not playing well, we have to give him his flowers when he does. And the past week and a half or so, he has rebounded from a very rough start. And no, he doesn't have to be Martin Brodeur in his prime. He just has to not lose games. And during this win streak and a little bit before it, he was doing just that. He might not have, at the start of the season, he was the closest thing to an active liability as he could be. In the last couple of weeks, he's either been an asset or he's done enough to put this team in a position to win. And when you're a Pittsburgh Penguins goaltender, that's all you need to be.
We've said that countless times, I think, on the show. We don't need him to be a Vezina caliber goalie, though it would be awesome if he was.
It'd be nice.
If he just has to be average to a little bit above average, the Penguins can get away with that. But that'll do it for this edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Thank you all so much for listening to / watching this one. We'll be back with another episode for you all on Thursday when we preview this massive game against the New Jersey Devils. That one will be up pretty early for you all, probably around 8, 9 a.m. in the morning to get you all set for the game at 7 o'clock on Thursday night. Again, that's going to be a lot of fun. Let's see if the Penguins can finally beat the Devils after getting swept by them last year. And again, I know they don't have Nico Hischier or Jack Hughes, but this is still a very, and I mean a very dangerous Devils team. We all saw what they did last year. And so far this season, they've been still pretty decent to say the least. But we'll have you all set for that one on Thursday, recap that one on Friday, get you all set for the massive weekend coming up as well on that episode. But again, thank you all so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. We'll be back on Thursday.